All right. So you can see now it's streaming on live, and there we go. All right, welcome everyone. This live stream interview is with Mia King, who I'm proud to say is also from Duke University, like I am. Obviously, our situation is a little different since I graduated in 2009. She graduated a lot more recently. She'll tell you more about those details. But I just wanted to point out that in this case, her interview is more focused on how to navigate life, not just hers, but how do you apply her experiences and your own experiences to your life and go from there to figure out what schools you want to attend and what jobs you want to seek and how do you find mentorship, other stuff like that. So Mia, thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So go ahead and tell everyone a couple things about yourself. Who are you as a person?
Sure. Where to start? I am what I hope to be is very young in my young adult life. Very early in my career, I graduated from Duke in May of 2019, and went straight into the workforce from there. And we can get into that. But who I am as a person, I've grew up kind of half in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, and half in Seattle, Washington. So I've kind of lived the culture in both sides of the country, and they are very different. I'm a really big family person, love to cook, love to read, very intellectually curious, and kind of love to have my finger in all pots. And yeah, that's kind of who I am. At Duke, I studied computer science. I wanted to be a software engineer. That part of my kind of background in Seattle, being right next to the Microsofts, the Amazons, had a really big impact on me, and I started coding pretty young when I was in high school. Interned at Microsoft right after high school before going to Duke. At Duke, so I did computer science. I minored in economics and sociology. Did 4 years of research in sociology. Wrote a thesis about it. Loved it. So as I said, a very intersectional approach to academics. I'm a very intersectional person. And while at Duke, I was involved in lots of different programs. I was in business oriented women. I was a Robertson Scholar. I was a Baldwin Scholar. And the reason I went to Duke was because I was a Robertson Scholar. So they paid for my education on a merit based scholarship, which was a wonderful opportunity. It exposed me to wonderful fellow scholars and also just gave me lots of opportunities that I would have had otherwise, including going to Duke at all. And same with the Baldwin. The Baldwin was a wonderful community of women that really empowered me to be my full self and to pursue my wildest dreams. And I think that I am warming up to that, but I think I definitely would not be the person I am today without my fellow Baldwin peers, without my time with Duke, and of course, growing up in the place I did with my family.
Thank you. That's great. So I think one of the interesting things is, you mentioned Atlanta, Seattle. You took a couple different majors, and I know for some people they hear about college, you just do one major. I don't know about other schools, but I imagine there's a lot of schools that are like Duke. They encourage you to do multiple majors, try to study a lot of different things. And I want to kind of get into, you talked about doing computer science, economics, sociology, being very intersectional to the point of you're saying, here's stuff from STEM, here's stuff from liberal arts. I guess, do you feel like a lot of that was your upbringing being in Atlanta and Seattle, or was it more of a conscious decision once you got to campus?
That's a really good question. I wouldn't say it was an entirely conscious decision. I think, to your point, I have lived a very intersectional life in many ways. I mean, I'm a Black woman, for one. And two, I have kind of had to be comfortable in many different types of spaces. I've gone to lots of different types of schools, lived in different cities. But my decision to study so many topics was pretty accidental. I think that I got to Duke and all I wanted to do was focus on job security. That's all I wanted. And so that really
Yeah.
determined my major was going to be computer science. That was it. Full stop. I wanted to
Yeah.
know at the end of the day when I graduated, I could go and be a software engineer, go work at a Microsoft, whatever. And I enjoyed the work. Luckily I enjoyed the content. But honestly, top of my mind was job security.
Yeah.
And I think that that was kind of like the backstage, the background. I was like, okay, I have a strong major and a strong field. Now, what do I really want to study? And
Yeah.
I think that actually economics was something that I thought in the beginning I would double major in. I thought that I would do computer science and economics together, and I thought that I, was very interested in the markets. I took micro and macro in high school and really loved the classes. And what I found was lacking once I started to study it at Duke was kind of this disregard for the like real human lived experience. I think a lot, we talk about supply and demand, we talk about trade-offs, we talk about opportunity costs, but we don't talk about the very real life circumstances that
Yeah.
create and cause those trade-offs. And so I found economics to be a little too impersonal to be an area of study for me. So I dropped that to a minor. And then I just happened to be enrolled my first semester freshman year in a sociology course and loved it. I loved how it validated a lot of the social theories that I didn't know I was encountering on a daily basis, why I had to code switch, why I felt uncomfortable in certain spaces, who was, what the racial like dispersion looked like at Duke and why, and what were the systemic issues that had led up to that. And so I found in sociology a solace and a comfort that I wanted to stick with. I found the content was interesting. I thought it was fun, and very validating. And out of that one class I took freshman year, I wrote a research proposal. It got approved. I got grants,
Wow.
professors sponsor it, and I ended up writing this thesis that's all about this topic that was very near and dear to me. And it was, stereotype threat of intersectional women in STEM classrooms. So it was like a very, full circle, my experience, what I like to study, what I like to do, and then kind of studying. It was a very meta thinking about how I think
Yeah.
experience. But I think it was just when I came in, being open to the 1% and being willing to explore lots of different fields, to kind of figure out what was a good fit for me. And I don't want to discount computer science. I love it. I think it's fascinating. And it is job security, which I don't think should be not
Yeah.
considered. I think it's important. And luckily I had the time, I didn't have to work in school. So I had the time to kind of be able to study and dabble. And that is also a privilege. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. I'd like to point out to everyone, when you're in school, there's a lot of choices to make. Obviously, one big thing for Mia is saying, all right, kind of accidentally hear sociology, but then from there saying, I want to pursue this thesis and all that. I think in my case, because I did pre-med in history, so obviously it's a little different, because at the time I was thinking maybe sports medicine, I don't know, history in case if I want to do law. So for me, it's a little bit more exploring rather than, okay, I'm straight up doing this. To be fair, it was a different time, the recession hadn't quite kicked in. So, our mindset back in college was a little different at the time. But, from there, obviously outside of your class, as you mentioned, business-oriented women, which I believe that also started sometime when I was on campus. Baldwin, I guess uh, what I remember about Baldwin is a lot of the focus is on leadership, not just on campus, but in your own lives as a person. I always thought of it as it's kind of like Duke Engage, in that it's saying, hey, what can you go and do right now in your community? It's not just we sit around and talk. It's, hey, go and do something. Um, for those, I guess for those two, how did you find out about them? How they shape your career at Duke? Just tell us more about that.
Yeah. In terms of how I found out about them, I found out about the Robertson program, which was another, leadership program, um, in my search for merit-based scholarships. And when I applied to Duke, and blessedly was awarded a scholarship. And that was a program that was a partnership with Duke and UNC. So I was admitted to Duke, but I could technically also take classes at UNC. I was required to spend a semester at UNC, which was another forced experience of going from, the small liberal arts private school that was Duke to like the big public massive school that was UNC. And so I kind of got to live both college experiences. Robertson provided a selection of like classes we had to take, but also funding to do lots of exploration in the summer. So I would write grants and get to,
Hmm.
travel and study, I'd study like intersectional representation of art and museums in New York and
Wow.
Paris, things like that. And so I think what that program specifically did was I got a lot of toolkits for how to be the type of leader I want to be, for sure. I was able to practice them. And I also was given the flexibility and means to be able to explore like my kind of wildest, broadest dreams that didn't fit necessarily into a career path or didn't,
Yeah.
give me a credit on my transcript. And so I think that was what that program, and also gave me a wonderful community of scholars. And then on the Baldwin side, Baldwin um, was, you apply your freshman year and it was kind of, there are posters everywhere on campus. And it was like, are you a woman identified leader who wants to like change the Duke community and change the world? And like, who wants to say no to that? And so I did apply and luckily was selected. And Baldwins are like my best friends. My Baldwins,
Yeah.
I'm going to see two tomorrow. It's like,
Oh, that's
that
great.
is such a empowering, beautiful group of women. And we live together starting in sophomore through senior year. You live in the Baldwin dorm. And I think that the type of leadership that program inspires is very brave. It's very raw. It's like you have to be a leader because you have this community of women who are all leaders in their own way, and it really encourages you to find that niche and like pursue it bravely. And I think especially at a school like Duke, it's not always popular to do anything that's not like consulting, baking, tech, whatever. And so it can be harder to find those alternative paths. And so I think that the Baldwin program generally inspired me to do what I want to do. And then within campus also gave me a voice and gave me a platform to use it. And so, while I was at Duke, I was involved in lots of kind of efforts to change Duke for the better. I was on the President's Task Force for Hate and Bias Issues. I helped, draft the first student conduct policy that, had a repercussions for acts that were hate charged, things like that. And so I think that both programs, especially Baldwin, really helped me to just find my voice, figure out what I wanted to use it for. And I think that a lot of the tools and skills I learned in those programs, I am still kind of discovering within myself. I'm about, a year and a half outside of school. And I think that, I went into consulting, which isn't, it's a fine job. It's a job. And so I think that what I'm figuring out now is like, do I want to be here forever? And what does my, overall career trajectory look like? And I don't think I'd be able to ask myself these questions and really and answer them very honestly without having had I wouldn't say training, but the safe space to be able to fail in undergrad and to kind of just try things. Like you said, undergrad is about choices, and I had lots of opportunities to make choices and make them because they were the ones I wanted, not because I felt I had to.
Yeah. So I guess from all that, what kind of advice would you like to give everyone who's thinking about going to school, or if they're in school trying to figure out, I'm a junior, what do I do? Recession plus pandemic. What would you like to tell them?
That's a good question. I would say it's important to back solve. I think that I always thought about where I wanted to be one day. And I
Yeah.
think that in and of itself can be a hard question. And I think what makes it easier is honestly just talking to people. I used to cold message like people on LinkedIn and be like, could you just talk to me about your job? And, try to figure out that way if it was the job I wanted to do. I researched, I interned in tech, I interned in baking, I interned in consulting. Like I hopped all over the place interning and just trying things out. And I think that again requires a certain level of privilege and freedom to be able to do that. But definitely try to figure out where you want to be. I thought I wanted to go to law school, so I shadowed judges for a while, so try to figure out what it is you want to do and back solve. My senior year in undergrad, I was like, I know I want to go to business school. I know I don't want to go tomorrow, but I know I want to go. And I applied and I got in, and I can defer 3 to 5 years. So like I'm into business school and can go whenever I want because I applied and I knew what I wanted to do. So I would say figure out where you want to do career-wise or not career-wise, whatever you want to do, and back solve. Does it require an undergraduate degree? Does it require you to get a master's? Does it require special training? And then, okay, if it does, how do you want to pay for it? Are there schools out there that have, merit scholarships? Do you qualify for financial aid? Like it's a step-by-step kind of regression back to where you are now and just planning out those steps. And I think I've always been the type of person that kind of looks like, okay, if I want an internship this year, I need to be looking for those applications a year in advance and stuff like that. And so I would say, like, once you know where you want to go, like, lock onto that, hold on to that, and back solve to what you need to do to get there. I think personally, my view is that jobs typically that require a lot of jobs that require a bachelor's degree are a little more stable sometimes, and so you can I would recommend going to college, but I don't think it is for everyone, but I would recommend it. And there are lots of ways you can pay for it. And I would just say, make sure you're Googling. That's how I found programs like the Robertson Scholar and stuff. Well, let me be honest, my mom found them, but you can find those. And then I think you asked for advice. Did you ask if I had any advice?
Yeah, yeah. If you want to give other advice, which you've already given a lot, but if you have a defining, I mean, it sounds like you may have given that already, but if you want to add on to that.
I would say that it's really important to always have a plan B. And if you've figured out where you want to go and you've back solved, you could still get to that place and realize it's not what you thought it was. And that's when it becomes important to make sure that you have that degree and like that even if you did study the things you wanted, that you also got a degree in something that has job stability associated with it. Because I think I'm always multitasking and trying to like figure out exactly where I want to be, but also, and I think this is also a product of being a Black woman, like also maintain credibility and, accreditation to like ensure that, if like I hate my job right now, I can go get another one. And it's okay if this isn't the job that it turned out that I thought I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to do this for life and maybe I don't. And so I still have a good degree and mentors and a network to fall back on. And so I think that you got to play the long game and the short game at the same time all the time. And it's exhausting, but it's rewarding. And I think amidst all that, I would say have fun because you never get your undergrad years back, man. You don't. So have fun. I did all this business stuff, and I also did a lot of other like social stuff. It was great, and it was a well balanced undergrad life, which I was very blessed to have.
Yeah. And just for anyone who, if you're coming from a small town like I did, or you don't really quite get it, you're hearing for the first time, have a plan B. Mia isn't saying plan A, go to college, plan B, don't go to college, which it sounds like that. But, what I learned when I started going to Duke, and I'm sure a lot of you will start to understand as you get older, but hopefully you find out earlier, is when people say have a plan B, it's more, what do you want the most? What's your highest priority? Go for that, lock in. But at the least, if that somehow doesn't work out, what are some secondary priorities? If your goal is to get into business school and you want Harvard, and if that doesn't work, well, okay, are you at least in position to go to Yale, Stanford, maybe you come back to Duke? And if that still doesn't work out, at the least, maybe you figured out you actually don't want to go to business school because you want to go to law school. So it's not to say you can only be like, plan A, go to college, plan B, don't go to college. It's more to say, where do you want to end up? But if that doesn't work out, where else are you satisfied and okay with saying, I'll go there? And then when you get to that point, then figure out, do I keep pushing for plan A, or do I go and say, you know what, I think this is where I need to be, where I want to be? So, definitely, like you mentioned, when you're an undergrad, you have a lot of things to do, the socializing. For me, a lot of that stuff, I really picked that up from a lot of my own classmates. So, which you already talked about for you, a little bit of growing up in Seattle, Atlanta, kind of bouncing around a couple of different things. So obviously, everyone has different starting points, but I guess for you, when you got to campus, you had Robertson, Baldwin, Business Oriented Women. Before that, you're already interning at Microsoft, stuff like that. Would you say there was was there kind of a point A where you're like, okay, I'm going to start evolving into, I want to get into business school one day? Or is it just it was just kind of more gradual for you?
It was definitely gradual. It was incremental steps. I interned at Microsoft. Didn't really love it. Okay, so I'm still gonna get the software engineer training, but I probably don't want to work there next summer. Okay, where do I want to work? Well, I really like economics so far. Maybe I want to work at a bank. Okay, let's start cold emailing people from LinkedIn. Let's go to like the Deutsche Bank, the like Bank of America, the Goldman. They have like early career camps. Let's go to
Yeah.
those. Let's apply. Let's be looking for those applications on their websites. Let's apply. Let's pursue those opportunities. Great, now I have an interview. Let's do the super day. Great, now I do have an internship in banking lockdown. Hated that too. What's next? Okay, and and so now it's like at each stage I learned something new. Okay, and software engineering it was like I want to work more with teams. In banking it was I want a more collaborative environment. What's collaborative and has teams? Consulting. Let's intern in that. And I liked it, and that's why I'm here. And so I think that it's incremental steps. It's the evolution is kind of just like at every stage trusting yourself and knowing that kind of like you said, just it's not plan A yes, plan A or plan B no. It's like plan A yes, plan B maybe and it's kind
Yeah.
of figuring out, there's more than one path to get to whatever elusive happiness we might be pursuing. And just at each stage trusting that if I don't like something, trying to figure out why and how, the next thing I pursue might be different. So it's just kind of slightly tweaking the prototype each round. um, I guess that's how you would say I evolved. Still
Yeah.
very, still lots of evolution to do, I'm sure.
Yeah. And if anyone's thinking, oh, I don't have the same increment, that's fine. My evolution was a little bit more kind of, it's like big jumps. So, for everyone, there's different circumstances where, obviously, I think what you did was the smarter version of, okay, how do I back solve? Let me go Google for that. So, if you're watching this thinking, oh, how do I get into Goldman Sachs? Well, start by Googling Goldman Sachs, uh, maybe info meeting or Goldman Sachs internships. Some places will have something specifically for freshmen. So you can say Goldman Sachs freshman program, freshman internship, and hopefully you can find those things. And then once you find someone who can tell you more, just keep asking. So for you, um, I mean, obviously for you, since this is more incremental, it wasn't necessarily here's this one thing that set you off. It's like I need to evolve. It's more, okay, what's the next step? Um, I guess for you, as opposed to kind of feeling like this is necessary in your life, was it more just, I guess, what was it that kind of led you to say, this makes sense, as opposed to, a lot of people get to college. Like for me, I got to college in the first semester. I was just kind of, I didn't really, I was going to say, I didn't go to class as much as I should have.
Hmm.
But for you, it sounds like even if you skip class every now and then, you made sure to catch up right away. Where I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to basketball games. Oh wait, I have too much to catch up.
Yeah. I I am really big on investing up front so that you have kind of the flexibility later. So I did not skip a class until like my senior spring.
Wow,
I think that's
that's
my I skipped one
impressive.
class my sophomore year because Obama was in town and I went to see him, but I went to the first half of it.
Understandable.
Um, but
Understandable.
my freshman year and I was definitely I was very focused. I think there's a thing about setting yourself up for success so that it's less of a scramble down the road. It's less of a gamble. I definitely had fun in undergrad. I definitely found times to be social. Some of those social moments, especially in the first years, were like in the library studying. Um, but I think that it was definitely a trade-off. But once I got to, my senior year, I had a full-time job locked down. I applied to business school like within, whatever. So by the time I was done with that, like I was like, I had a full job locked down. I had applied to business school. I was graduating with honors because I had written a thesis. I could do whatever I want. Like I took photography and drama and golf and like in one
Oh wow.
semester. It was like fun. And so I think I am a delayed gratification person. I think there's
Yeah.
also a way to do it though, where you weave more of that fun in throughout. I am more the type of person who wants to have the like end goal secured before I like indulge. But
Yeah.
there's more, like you said, there's more than one path. You don't have to do it that way. I'm just more of an incremental I like to have my plan B and C and D. So that's
Yeah.
what I'm comfortable with. And I think part of, you know, becoming a leader, just coming into yourself, is learning what you're comfortable with and what type of risk you're willing to take. And I'm a very risk averse person. So
Yeah. And I think one of the key things you mentioned is you want to you want to invest ahead of time. And for me, playing basketball growing up, going to Duke, and even then playing a lot of basketball there, something that I always believed in was practice. People talk about practice makes perfect, but I always believe what Coach K said is perfect practice makes perfect. And I think one of the big things is people think, oh, how do you keep up with all this stuff? Well, some of it is you do need that self discipline of saying, you know what, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and go to the gym. Now, I never did that myself, but there are people who do that. I would stay up late. But I think the key is if you're going to play a game to try to win, this isn't a set percentage, but it really should be 10% of your time involving that thing, because the other 90% should be you're working on your skills, you're working on this one thing, you're correcting a bad habit. And obviously, the time I put into the gym on the courts, you put into academics. And I think for a lot of people, that is a really difficult thing for me and you as well. We had to at some point we had to learn how to say yes. I need to practice. Try to balance that with having some fun, but then saying get this done, and then I can have that freedom. Um, I'd like to say I'm sorry that you didn't get to play golf with President Obama. I guess he came by 2 years early. Well, hopefully that happens in the future. But I guess you've reached a point where you're still growing as a person. You're still trying to do a lot with your life, but obviously having you on here, you're already able to impact others. And it sounds like on campus, even in high school, you probably were already impacting others. Um, so I guess in this case, how would you like to impact others moving forward?
yep, that's a great question. I I'm really big on equity and institutional equity. So like I said, I did some work with that at Duke. When I graduated, I was an instructor with Girls Who Code, teaching computer science to girls. And so I also worked as kind of the head of computer science for a startup incubator in Durham, helping students become entrepreneurs. And so I try to give back, I guess, mostly through the younger kids and through helping them kind of realize their potential and also what technical literacy can do for them. I think that we live in an increasingly digital world, and so having computer science knowledge is really valuable. So I think I try to do that. I try to be a mentor whenever if anyone reaches out to me, I try to be a mentor. Uh, so I do things like that, and I think that within my company, I'm doing a lot of DE&I work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that my company has a big potential to be able to impact other companies. We're kind of leading the way in that. We're having an increasing client base to work on cases like that. And so I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion at an institutional level, and particularly educational equity, particularly computer science education, are kind of where I try to have impact. Moving forward, I don't know. I think it's something that I want to figure out more is like, where do I give back? How do I give back? When? And I think that that's kind of like you said, like I'm getting to that position now where I'm not quite an entry level employee and I have a little comfort, a little flexibility. I have no time, but I do need to, figure that out. And I think that I'm looking to my peers, I'm looking to kind of the generation above me to say, when you were in this age, how did you give back and what did you do in your community? And so I think that's something I'm still figuring out, frankly, but hoping to definitely invest more in that area.
Yeah, that is great. And you mentioned earlier you already applied to business school and got in. A lot of people, it's the more traditional path of I go to work and then at some point I apply. Sometimes because I can't get promoted anymore, they're saying you need a degree. Sometimes it's a bit of I missed school and it's a good time to try to get another degree and then keep moving forward. Um, I guess for you, do you view that as when you start business school, do you view that as kind of once you get to a point of I'm not having the same impact on others, or you're gonna just kind of look for as I guess look for the time to go, as in it's time to go, so I can continue the impact and then maximize it, exponentiate it.
Yeah, it's a good question. So my company actually has a pretty structured program on there's a pretty natural break in tenure and learning where an MBA makes sense.
Okay.
And so I will get it then, but I think that why I went with it and why I agree with it is because I think it's kind of the first few years I built this toolkit, this analytical kind of business savvy consultant toolkit. And then I think what I'm going to want to figure out to do is where I want to leverage that toolkit and where I want to use it. And I think that business school will help me with the scaling of that toolkit, whether it's coming back to the firm, whether it's branching out and doing something else. And so I think some of the big draws of business school are kind of the network that it can offer, the exposure, kind of like going back to my first freshman year of like new fields and new resources that I could find a passion of mine that I didn't even know existed. And I think that I'm really passionate about institutional equity, and maybe I want to focus on that within the consulting sphere. And so that's kind of my hope that business school can help me figure out.
All right. And here's a question that it's a little different, but if you could go back and tell your, I guess, say your 15-year-old self, or kind of some high school, maybe before high school, but if you could tell Mia King from a few years ago, um, if you could talk to that person, how would you want to impact her? How do you want to impact who you are today?
That's a great question. I mean, I guess I always wish I could go back and tell myself that like it would all work out. It's the basic answer. But I think that every each subsequent, I guess, achievement or like goal I meet, I'm always like, oh, I did it.
Yeah,
And I think that maybe I wouldn't tell myself that, because I think a lot of times it's the uncertainty and the passion that drives me to, push forward. So if I knew it was happening, I probably wouldn't work as hard.
that is true. I do
Yeah.
wonder about that for myself.
Yeah. I think I would just tell myself that I have to trust myself. I think I learned that in undergrad, but I think early on it would have been helpful just to trust myself, trust my gut.
Yeah,
I think we get inundated with so much in the media about what's right and what's the good career and who's a millennial and who's not and what you're supposed to do with your time, and especially under COVID too.
yeah.
And so I think just trusting myself, I think that's something I've really grown into and learned to do, but I think that probably could have benefited me somewhat in high school, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I like to tell anyone who's watching this, millennials aren't all the young people. I'm kind of I was born in '86, so I was kind of early millennial, late Gen X. I'd say partly Gen X because small town, growing up semi-poor, we were a little bit behind the curve. But I think for you, you're kind of on the cusp of
I'm on the
millennials becoming Gen X, right?
Yeah, and exactly. It's
Okay.
like it's stuff like that. They're like, who cares?
Yeah,
Like people
yeah,
are like, oh, millennials this, millennials that. I digress, but I guess I'm just saying that there's a lot of public opinion about everything, and the
yeah,
only one that matters is yours. And that's what I would tell myself.
yeah. Yeah, and it sounds like, a lot of the same things I would have told myself in high school. Say if I were 15, or if I met my 15-year-old self, I wouldn't really have much to say. I look at what he was doing at the time. I would, if you told me to talk to him, I'd probably just, hey, kid, uh, just keep trusting yourself. You'll be fine. You'll get to where you want to be. You don't know what that is yet, but you're gonna love it when you get to that place. I'd say probably the only thing is, hey, celebrate yourself a little bit more. You don't have to go and celebrate everything, but just because you finished a big project or something doesn't mean, hey, just move on to the next thing. Maybe take a little bit of time. Just kind of think to yourself, hey, I did a
Just
good job, and then move
yeah,
on.
celebrate the wins. I would agree. I would
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess to kind of close out, I think is this one of the bigger questions I always want to ask others, because I don't ask myself this enough. But in your life, who do you want to thank?
I thank my family above all else. They've made me the person I am today. They've supported me. They have, comforted me when I cry over a bad midterm or a bad meeting. Still, they're
Yeah.
wonderful people, have made me who I am. So yeah, probably them. And I think throughout all the years, I'd probably also thank the people who have just answered my questions. They're probably ill-formed and underinformed, but the people who answered my questions, because questions, helped with that evolution we talked about. So yeah, and thanks to the Robertson program for paying my tuition.
Definitely, definitely. So there you have it, everyone. Mia Keen, Duke 2019, who is now a consultant, and clearly you can see she's very excited, willing to help out when she has time. We'll be sure to put some of her contact information in the video description. Feel free to reach out, and yeah, feel free to watch this again, share this with others. But like Mia said, like I said, trust yourself a little bit more, celebrate a little bit more, and if you don't end up where you want to be the most, at least you'll be in a position to decide, do I want to keep pursuing that, or maybe what, this is okay, I have the time and flexibility to give back. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Mia, so much for your time, and have fun meeting up with your friends tomorrow.
Thanks.
Safe